wanted to leave Michael. It came as no surprise to her, and she helped Bonnie make the necessary arrangements. The couple often fought at work, with some altercations turning physical. Ivan recalled watching the two fight in the parking lot, and Michael slammed a car door on Bonnie's hand. Bonnie returned to work in tears, with a bruised hand and broken nails. Those around the couple knew that their marriage was on the rocks, and had been for many years. The freedoms that Bonnie had expected with adulthood eluded her. Her husband controlled Bonnie in all regards. She worked where he could keep an eye on her. Her car, their house, their bank account were all in her husband's name. She had secretly opened a bank account in her name and was squirreling away small amounts of money. She went as far as having the bank statements delivered to her at the office instead of at home. Michael discovered the letters from the bank, and he forced her to close the account. Instead of a bank account, she would give her friend cash to hold on to for her. By January, she had $1,250, and she was ready to leave and take her now 3-year-old son Aaron with her. She had planned to go while Michael was on a work trip. She had a deposit down for an apartment and enrolled her son in a new preschool. On January the 6th, something happened when Bonnie got home from work. She had come home with Aaron a little late, around 7 p.m. She was later than usual, but she had made several stops after picking up Aaron from daycare. She had stopped at the dry cleaners, Walmart, and took Aaron to McDonald's for a quick dinner. Ivan had expected to see Bonnie that evening. The two were planning a baby shower for a co-worker, and they had planned to write invitations. However, at around 8 p.m, Bonnie called Ivan and told her that she couldn't come over because she and Michael were having a discussion. Ivan recognised that Bonnie was upset. She was sniffling on the phone and sounded like she had been crying. Ivan offered to bring the things over to Bonnie's house if she needed some company, but Bonnie said it wasn't necessary and that she would see her in the morning. The following morning, January the 7th, Bonnie and Michael had been expected to be in the office early that day. That day, a nurse was coming in to do physicals for all the employees on the company health insurance. Everyone was asked to go in an hour early to ensure that it didn't disrupt business. To avoid any disruptions with their health insurance, they needed to be there that day for the physical. By 8 a.m, Ivan and Bernie had become concerned about Bonnie's absence. Bonnie knew how important it was to be early that day, and it was unlike her to be late for work or miss a meeting. Immediately they knew something was wrong. One of his employees an adult, he has no recollection of either interview and no memories of that night. A loving family later adopted Aaron, and Aaron never lived with his biological father again. Aaron now goes by Aaron Fraser. During the investigation, officers pieced a timeline of what they thought had happened between Bonnie's call with Evan and the following day when her purse was found. the slab on concrete when he discovered it was covering a layer of broken brick. The broken brick had sections that were mortared together. He thought it was odd, but kept removing the pieces. Once the concrete and brick were removed, he switched from the digger to a shovel. He had located a leak and was attempting to find the pipe that was the leak source. At approximately 2 feet into the hole, his shovel hit something odd. He unearthed something he initially thought to be a coconut. The coconut appeared to have fallen out of a bag. He examined the coconut and the bag close up and saw a portion of a human jaw. It was at that moment that he realised he had likely found the remains of his missing mother. She was buried in a shallow grave underneath an outdoor shower in the backyard of his childhood home. Aaron Fraser has no lasting memories of his mother. He relies solely on pictures, home videos and stories from those who remembered her. Aaron made the gruesome discovery. After the discovery of the remains, a full forensic investigation began. Due to time, the location of the remains, and a long-standing broken pipe, much of the evidence was lost. There was evidence that there may have been damage caused by a projectile on the inside of a hip bone. However, no cause of death could be determined. The officers that searched the home in the days preceding to Bonnie's disappearance all admitted to not checking under the shower area. Officers had not felt that the area had been disturbed, and everyone had assumed that the wood pallet wasn't easily moved, so no one touched it. There was also many things on top of the wood pallet that made it look undisturbed. To them, it had been beyond the realm of possibilities that someone had been buried under that shower area. Had they looked, they might have discovered that the concrete under the pallet wasn't set yet. Bernie had sold the property to Michael and Bonnie when they had married. When Bernie had owned the property, he said that the shower area had been soil with a layer of bricks covered by pebbles for drainage and topped with what was described as a wood pallet to keep your feet clean. It was odd that, according to Michael's story, Bonnie had left that evening, not with her regular keyring, but the spare key from the dealership. Officers hypothesized that at some point after midnight in the early morning hours, someone, likely Michael, drove Bonnie's car to the Jacksonville airport and parked it in the long-term parking area. Afterward, Michael dumped the purse in a nearby motel dumpster to paint a narrative that Bonnie had upped and left town. It was likely Michael's hope that the purse would never be found and the car was discovered first. Unfortunately for him, that series of events did not occur. Michael's story also changed throughout the years. He had first said that after 8:30, Bonnie had gone on her stepper before leaving the house. During his trial, he said that Bonnie painted her nails. Bonnie always wore acrylic nails. The fake nails were recovered intact after so many years. Bonnie always had her nails done routinely at the salon, and those closest to her said that she never painted her nails. In 1993, Michael also said she had left the house wearing jeans and a sweater. Bonnie was wearing pink sweatpants when her remains were found, and in the burial site,